In this video, we're going to continue our exploration of feature sets that exist in 3D Coat's Paint workspace, yet are not found in the standard tool panel. Here at the very top of the user interface, you'll notice a drop list menu, and this contains conditions which allows you to confine your texture paint to certain areas of the surface. For example, if I wanted to paint any crevices, the wrinkles, pores, things of that sort, then I might want to choose the concave condition. And you can see a little icon to the left that helps to indicate visually the functionality of that particular condition. You have some that are based on surface detail, and 3D Coat will create a curvature map that it not only utilizes to drive these conditions, but it will allow you to export a curvature map if you need for game engines or any other application that may make use of it. Then you have some that are based on an ambient occlusion map that 3D Coat can calculate. So again, we'll look at these in more detail momentarily. When I create a new layer, and I want to first set the channels that I want to work on, whether it's depth, color, or glossiness. This would be a good segue to mention for any new user, you have two major painting platforms in 3D Coat. One is your traditional low polygon UV mapped texture painting. The other is painting directly on the vertices of a high poly sculpt that originates in the sculpt room itself, utilizing what is typically referred to in the industry as vertex painting. So just for clarification's sake, I want to mention that if you want to work on a low polygon UV mapped mesh, then you want to import it directly into the Paint workspace. If you want to work on a high poly sculpt, then you either want to import a mesh into the sculpt workspace or create one from scratch there. The reason why I wanted to mention this is because both platforms share the same workspace, the same workflow, including layers, blending modes, and the new paint conditions as well. So let's go ahead and get started here by selecting concave. Let's say I wanted to paint some beard stubble, which I already have here on this one layer. If I hide and unhide it, you can see the difference. And what I did is I chose more on concave, and you'll see 3D Coat create that curvature map. Okay. And you need to be on a layer that is visible in order to see preview results. And I'm also going to turn off wireframe by hitting the hotkey. So let me go to layer 22, and now I can see a preview of what it's going to look like as I apply it. You'll also notice directly to the right of that drop list menu some parameters for the degree and also the contrast. So let me zoom in a little bit here. I can hit X like I can in Photoshop to switch the foreground and background color. You can apply this paint as either a brush stroke or apply it to the entire model using the fill tool. You could also use the paintbrush in conjunction with one of these marquee selection modes. And I probably would want to uncheck ignore back faces so that it will apply pixels on the back side of the model as well. Okay, so I can adjust the degree amount and see in the preview window what it's going to look like. And I would advise you can always go a little bit higher than you might normally need in terms of opacity and depth and things like that. Anytime you're painting bump, you might want to go on the high side because you can always dial it back down right here in your layer panel. You can dial down the opacity, the depth, and the gloss. Okay. So, yeah, let's bump our contrast up. You can even go into the negative if you need. And you may notice these next two options here, less on concave and less on convex, seem to be a mirror of these first two options. In some degree that is true, but they're slightly different. So let's try less on convex. Let's bring the degree down and then up. And you can see I can still paint in those areas, but it acts somewhat differently. So you probably would want to go through and experiment with these different conditions and options to determine which works best for your own preferences. Okay, so I can adjust the contrast a bit. So let's go back to more on concave, and you can always paint through this little preview window, because anytime your cursor is inside this, 3D Coat is temporarily going to turn the preview off so that you can indeed work in this area. But once you move your cursor outside, then it's going to reveal that preview. You can also scale your panel accordingly. Let me uncheck specularity or glossiness, because I don't need that at this point in time. And I probably want to check opacity as well, and you'll find that this little preview window will also reveal the level of opacity. So if you have a very low amount, you might not see much. I'll press fairly hard. Now let's say I wanted to paint kind of a lighter color here on the raised areas of the skin folds. Let's try something like that. And let's switch to more on convex. And we can adjust our contrast. Now let's check less on concave, and maybe this works a little bit better for me here. Turn a degree down. Okay. I can kind of lighten up some of these areas. And I'm just applying light pressure here. I don't go too hard on it. Hold the shift key and smooth a little bit. And maybe I want to add a little bit of glossiness in that area. So I want to adjust the glossiness intensity as I brush. I don't have to worry about the color. I don't have to set a certain level of gray or white or black or anything like that. Just let 3D Coat do it for me. Okay. At any point in time, if I want to erase, I can always hold the Control key. Or if I have a Wacom stylus, you can just flip it over and use the eraser end. Okay, and now what I can do is change the blending mode. Let's try something like overlay. So let's look at some other options here. More on flat. Let's bring up our preview panel. Use your slider to scrub the different values. More on curved. And then with these next few options here, more on lit, more on shadow, if you hover over that, you'll notice in the tooltip it mentions that you need to create an ambient occlusion map for these. So let's go ahead and take care of that by going to Textures, Calculate Occlusion. I might use the post-smoothing step. Let's try about 3 or 4 and use the default here. While it's calculating, this would be a good time to pause the video and pick it up in the next one. So we'll see you there.